Hi everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of May 11th, 2020. We have a really active and powerful sky playing out all throughout the week, where the word active is actually the key word because we have such an intense celestial activity from all sides taking place next week that the energy is going to feel very multilateral, very multifaceted, so to speak. So chances are that it's going to be so very different for different people. That's why I highly encourage everyone who is genuinely interested not only to listen to my own version of this, but to listen to other astrologers, because astrology is not that much without the astrologer. So basically, we're interpreting this through the lens of our own souls, our own perceptions, our own beliefs. So that is why listening to another soul have their take, their interpretation over next week's energy is definitely going to be a great addition, because the more you know, the more perspectives you become aware of, the more knowledgeable and the more guided you can become, because this is a week where three planets are going retrograde, and that represents a massive energy shift, while at the same time Mars and Mercury are going to be changing signs, which also places a totally different energetic and even emotional configuration to dominate over our reality, and that cannot be generalized because there's so very much going on right now. Also, I am not going to be speaking about each planet's retrograde in greater detail because we have specially dedicated videos for this. If you're interested, I made a special article where I gathered all the videos, the Venus retrograde, Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter retrogrades. You can check out their deeper meanings and their symbolism and the aspects they're going to be forming with other power players in the description down below. I'm going to link that article. Now let's begin, and we start the week under Saturn standing still in the sky and preparing to go retrograde. Now, when a planet is standing still in the sky, it doesn't matter if it goes backwards or forwards, its symbolism is greatly amplified, while at the same time we also have an anaretic Mars in the sign of Aquarius, and this intensifies greatly the symbolism of Aquarius. Now, on one hand, Saturn going retrograde is a really long awaited energy, so to speak, by most astrologers, because at the time when Saturn entered into the sign of Aquarius, it coincided with all the social distancing rules and all the rules and regulations meant to prevent the coronavirus spread. Now, when Saturn is standing still in the sky and going retrograde, it so happens that for very many countries it coincides with the exact moment when they start, or at least make a very good attempt, to go back to normality, to open the economy, to relax all the social distancing rules. So when Saturn goes retrograde, its symbolism turns inwards, and it represents that our external limitations, or perhaps the limitations of physical reality, social limitations, and ultimately the limitations from centralized power, our rulers, our governors, are going to be loosened, and this gives us, the individual, the small collectives, the groups, in other words, all the symbolism of Aquarius, it gives us the power, it gives us the influence, and it makes us to be judges in our own lives. And this energy of Saturn retrograde is going to feel much more comfortable, much more natural for those individuals who were born under a Saturn retrograde. Of course, at the same time, this Saturn retrograde is going to be having so very many different implications politically, socially, regarding the rules and regulations, the traditions, our sense of normality. So all of this changes because this is the celestial moment, this is the divine timing when we become the judges, when we have to make decisions and choices, but we have a lot of time to do this because Saturn retrograde is going to be lasting until the end of September, and that gives us all the time to process. That gives us all the time to, figure out what everything, the big picture, means to us. It's still in the sign of Aquarius what the future has to represent for us, and this is the moment when we have to create an authentic future plan, or at least a desire what we need to accomplish in the future, and we have to align with it and we have to embody it, because Saturn retrograde invites us all to embody whatever we believe, to embody our dignity, our normality, to honor this very present moment incarnation, who we are in this life and who we here to become, to evolve into, and ultimately everything that we have to do, but not just for to embody our spirit, the mission of our spirit, so to speak, but also the priorities, everything that is important for the human self. Ultimately, what is life if not just a big cumulus of information, of all the memories, all the things we have accomplished while being in matter, while being material entities, and all that information is going to be taken with us to wherever we go after this life ends. So that's why the Saturn retrograde has such powerful karmic implications, because it doesn't matter what centralized power think, it doesn't matter what the external rules and regulations are. This is the moment when karma gives us the power and the opportunity to choose whatever we want to experience and whatever life has to mean for us, both individually and based on the individual preferences, ultimately the collective reality. I said before, you can find out more about the implications of Saturn retrograde in the special videos you can find in the description below. And now moving on, at the same time that energetic Mars in the sign of Aquarius is squaring Mercury, still in the sign of Taurus, and this can represent frustration, this can represent stress, this can represent irritation, because on one hand, Mars in Aquarius, especially at a very powerful point in Aquarius, the karmic point, can represent all our future hopes and dreams and whatever we are working towards to accomplish, because Mars definitely involves us investing effort and energy into it. Even if it's just dreaming it, even if it's just thinking it, it's still effort. Now that Mercury in Taurus is very grounded, very down to earth, very realistic, and if our calculations don't add up, if we do not have everything that we need in the present moment in our lives to enable our future plans and dreams, well, that's going to cause frustration. Yes, ultimately we are going to reevaluate everything, recalculate, find more info, wait and be patient for new things to enter our sphere, but it's still frustration. And another way this energy can be playing out is being bombarded by all the information from social media, from television, from the government, from official sources. But when that information is way too much, Mars in Aquarius, the internet, well then it is going to have the opposite effect on us, where we no longer trust it, we no longer even desire it. It just determines us to seek our truth, maybe from unofficial sources, maybe go deep within and figure out what all this situation, what all the coronavirus and the global crisis means for us personally, and not based on ourselves, on the opinions, on the vision, on the researches of others, even if that other is the official source, even if that other is the government itself. This is where everything official, everything that has so much to do with Capricorn, basically, top-down power, authority, rules and regulations, is no longer seen as something that serves our highest good. So this is the moment when we have that Pluto retrograde and very, very soon the Jupiter retrograde, in Capricorn, and that is going to demolish the credibility and the faith and power that we invest into centralized power, and ultimately invite us all to reconstruct it, to reconfigure it, to give it a totally new life, to breathe our own personal hopes and wishes into it, and that ultimately should be enough for us to enjoy a future which we actually would like to experience, and where external reality, especially the legal side of it, what we hold as normal, the laws and regulations, are not gonna, how should I say it, work against us or be the major limiting source in our lives, and especially the symbolism of Capricorn, our life path, what we want to do in this life, the reason why we came into this existence. This ultimately, until 2024, when Pluto leaves Capricorn, this has to change everything, and I mean everything, including political systems, economic systems, social structures, what security means, what equality means, what equity means, what justice means. All of these rather philosophic principles are going to be transformed into something much more authentic and valid, to reflect who we are as a species, as a collective in the present moment. Now, at the same time, at the very beginning of the week, Mercury is still in Taurus, and it receives a celestial conversation of supreme harmony from Pluto and from Jupiter in Capricorn, and the power of these trines are extremely enlightening because these represent the truth. Yes, this can mean for some people like a challenge and a test to their faith, to whatever they believe in, maybe their optimism, maybe their spirituality, maybe their life view and highest principles, but this isn't a very uncomfortable energy. This is where we are actually ready to behold the truth, to behold whatever life reflects back at us. And this is the moment when we can change so very much, especially change our minds, change our way of thinking, change our everyday thought processes, which have much to do with our self-worth, because Mercury is still in the earthly sign of Taurus, which has much to do with worth and value and finances. So for very many people all over the planet, this is going to be like a celestial invitation to embody their true self-worth, regardless of what other people say, regardless of statistics show, regardless of anything. This is where what is true in your soul has to be true in your life. And Pluto and Jupiter the planet of blessings, and Pluto the hand of faith, basically, the portal to the divine will, well, that is going to be helping you. Now, from a totally different perspective, this can also play out as any kind of blessing, as maybe help from authorities, from the government, from local council, because Jupiter is the planet of generosity and a blessing, and a material blessing in Capricorn, even though it's not very strong in that part of the sky, but it can still represent a very powerful celestial help, which you get through either a highly influential person, meeting someone and becoming friends with someone who has friends in higher places, who can help you, who can advise you, who can give you all the good information. And at the same time, it can also represent the help of an organization or society itself, where if you have very big problems financially, maybe, if your financial future is under a big uncertainty, this energy can help you, especially when you have to manage debt, especially when you have to manage the finances, especially if you need to come up with that genius idea with the solution to the future, even if the future seems so very uncertain in the present moment. And that is absolutely understandable, because all of our futures, even the future of the human collective, is a little bit uncertain in the present moment. Now, if this wasn't enough, the Sun also is going to receive the same time of celestial conversations as Mercury does, but a little bit later because the sun has to catch up to Mercury. And the sun receiving a trine from Pluto is absolutely the energy of blessing, of celestial empowerment. It can trigger fated events. It can bring you so much truth and clarity. It is absolutely a healing energy, regeneration, where your self-worth is being healed, where your financial situation is being healed. But at the same time, this is also a very powerful psychological energy, because Pluto can be seen as the planet of psychoanalysis. So if you have anything in your subconscious, like maybe a trauma or bad education or bad upbringing, which diminishing your self-worth, and that is ultimately like affecting your financial situation, your success, what other people want to share with you, well, this is a very powerful healing energy for that, because it can reveal in an instant where the problem lies. And then ultimately the sun speaking in supreme harmony with Jupiter is definitely a blessing, where confronting the truth and readapting your inner truth, believing that yes, you're worthy, yes, you're valuable, yes, you were born blessed with so many skills, and life is what you make of it. Reality is what you perceive it as. Now that is a very powerful energy of blessing, which can actually do miracles in the long term, because it can help you and guide you make all the right choices and decisions for yourself. And more so than ever, at the very end of the week, when Jupiter stands still in the sky and prepares to go retrograde, now for some people that is a big challenge to their faith, to whatever they believe in, but that challenge is ultimately very positive and welcome, because as the most beautiful and influential astrologer of all in the whole wide world, Nadia Shah always says, healthy faith questions itself. And this is basically inviting you to embody a much healthier, much less rigid, much more gentler faith, which will serve you in your highest good in the months to come. While for those people who were born under a Jupiter retrograde, this can feel much more comfortable, because this is the moment when they have to embody and enact whatever they believe in. This is when they have to step up with their faith. This is when they have to invest all the power of their beliefs into what matters to them the most. Because the sun can also be seen as the energy of manifestation, but it is not the Saturnian type of manifestation, but rather it depends so much on your creativity, on your self-expression, and being best friends with yourself and your creative energy, so to speak. So self-knowledge is imperative. This isn't where you just have to be dignified and work hard and be perseverant like the Saturnian type of manifestation to get what you want. The sun type of manifestation is when you have to profoundly know yourself, and with that self-knowledge you can make your inner being work and do miracles in your life. And if this wasn't enough, the sun also forms the sextile, a celestial conversation of harmony with Neptune, and that is celestial inspiration, that is divine guidance, that is the gift of intuition, and ultimately that is very powerful artistic energy where you just can create, because inspiration, your muses, so to speak, are going to be with you 24/7. Of course, we also begin the week with a very powerful square, a conversation of maximum tension between Neptune and Mercury, but this still isn't the maximum expression of this energy. So this is like the energy of confusion. Venus is very uncomfortable in the dual sign of Gemini, especially under this square, because this is when we question, do we love this? Do we love that? Are we truly attracted to this and that? What do we truly think and feel for a person, an activity, a job? Anything is susceptible to love. Anything is susceptible to, attraction, if that makes us happy, if that fulfills us, either intellectually or emotionally. So this energy is going to be very uncomfortable, because it will keep us drowned in that Neptunian vibes, where maybe the matters of the heart, our emotional intelligence, wants to be dominant and wants to suppress our rationality. And the best way to go about this energy is not to turn it into a big inner conflict, where if you're confused about something, well, then just accept that you're confused and it's okay to be like this, because, reality is changing. Whatever is confusing in the present moment can all of a sudden in a week be crystal clear as the energy changes. And the energy is definitely going to be changing because Venus is also standing still in the sky and going retrograde next week. So this is going to amplify this energy. So the confusion is going to get heavier, thicker. But since it's retrograde, it's also getting to the bottom of things. It is also digging deep. And especially in the dual sign of Gemini, this is where you have a dual perspective and duality when digging deep, when finding answers, when searching for what this and that means to you personally, when wanting to, get an authentic image of what you feel. Well, duality is a blessing because yes, you work twice as hard, but the answers that you're gonna get are also going to be very long term, so to speak. They are going to be integrated in your inner truth, and especially, where is all of this leading us to, this Venus retrograde? Well, that's very obvious because we also have the North Node in the sign of Gemini. We're also going to be having Mercury here very soon, next week. So basically, this means that the mind and heart, the intelligence of the rationality, of the coldness of the thought and mental sphere, can actually coexist in supreme harmony with the heart and the intelligence of the heart space, our emotional intelligence. And when those two work together, well, then our lives are infinitely blessed, because knowing ourselves, being totally honest and true to our own emotions, to our whatever we love or repulse, whatever we wish to have in our life, whatever we attract or whatever we reject, if we are crystal clear about all of this, well, knowing ourselves is definitely knowing others, and all our confusion is actually a blessing because it gives us the chance to stand in another person's position, to take on the shoes of another person and understand them. And when you act from a place of understanding, well, then there is no conflict anymore, because you know why that other person is scared, angry, vulnerable, sad, or happy. It is definitely a position of power, and this is what this Venus retrograde is all about, because a healthy heart ultimately needs a healthy mind. And to this process, to actually achieve a healthy mind, in the North Node being in the sign of Gemini, is going to be the big theme of the next 18 months of our lives. And ultimately, after we achieve that mental clarity, when we know that we have control of our thoughts, and we know that thoughts can be loving just as well, it's not just emotions, well then, if we infuse love into our thoughts and our mental sphere, most importantly self-love, then that is already a big miracle, because this is going to be reflected in our educational systems. So our successors, the future generations, the children, our children, are going to be learning with love in their minds. And that is the key to a idealistic future, basically. Now, around the 12th of the month, Mercury is finally changing signs, leaving Taurus and entering its home sign of Gemini. Now, Gemini is the daytime expression of Mercury. This is where our communication, our thought processes, our rationality is blessed. This is when we can achieve so very many things with what we communicate, what we speak, what we write. This is an absolutely beautiful and wonderful aspect for all writers, communicators, but of course not just for these people, for everyone equally, because Gemini is basically our interhuman connections, how we initiate relationships, how we fix relationships, how we adapt to other people, how we serve psychologically through our attitudes and our mental thought processes, how we think of other people, how we think of the situation of another. That is the key to forming one-on-one alliances. And we also have Venus here, and very soon after next week we're going to be having the Sun here. So that's put the emphasis on the sign of Gemini. This is where we have to heal the mind, and this is where we have to embody the most beautiful and highest expression of Gemini, who is a communicator, who doesn't take life too seriously, who doesn't immerse in drama, who has a very specific mercurial type of optimism. So it's not just the big philosophical and religious one of Sagittarius, but it's rather the very practical, very rational type of optimism of Gemini. And that optimism is very useful because it makes so much sense. And when it makes sense, then you can believe it that much more. And that is definitely the key to healthy positivity, and not the toxic one where we have to just suffocate ourselves in happy thoughts. Otherwise we have to face the sad reality of our lives. Now the Gemini type of optimism is nothing like that, because Gemini can make sense of even the darker things, even the unpleasantries. And when it makes sense, and when we know that this leads us to a greater good, to a better future, then we are no longer rejecting it, but we are taking it as a gift and using it to go wherever our dreams, our soul takes us. Very soon, as Mercury enters into the sign of Gemini, its home sign, where it's extra powerful and where it can bring forward its better qualities. So this is a really good energy for students, those who want to start new studies, for communicators, those who want to learn a foreign language, those who just want to embrace the lightheartedness and the playful side of life, those who want to make new friends, get into new social circles, for example, those who want to be discovered by other people. And very soon, as Mercury enters this part of the sky, it's going to form a celestial conversation of supreme harmony. Saturn from fellow air sign Aquarius, and this is definitely an energy of blessing. This can play out in so many different ways, but either way it is a blessing, it is a reward. Saturn is the lord of karma, so if you put some serious effort, serious work, you sacrificed for some intellectual creation of yours, for example, Gemini, this can be a moment when you are rewarded, when you harvest the fruits of your labor. It is perfectly applicable for any project, for any community type of work, humanitarian type of work that you initiated in the past. Saturn can also represent self-sacrifice. So if you have been there for other people unconditionally in the past, and if you have helped them, if you worked for them, if you sacrificed, well, this can represent a major karmic blessing. But it isn't all about the past and what you have done in the past. It also empowers any type of work, especially intellectual work, humanitarian work, charity work, intellectual creation, research, science, even spirituality, writing your book, sharing information, being who you are and expressing yourself. This energy empowers all of this, and it can represent a major blessing, a major celestial help. If you are alone and that's your problem, that no one is there in your life to, inspire you, encourage you, but you're full of potential, well, this energy can bring someone significant in your life who can do exactly that to encourage you and promote you. This is where you can also be called by destiny, by karma, so to speak, to perform your work, to go out there and shine, to go and do whatever you need to do, whatever you're good at, whatever you're professional at. And this isn't the Capricorn type of professional. Simply, if you're good at something, go out there and do it. More importantly, if fate and karma and destiny are inviting you symbolically to do it, because it can be a massive journey towards success. And since Saturn is retrograde here, You are your own judge. You are your own guide. You are the master of your own life. And with that Pluto retrograde, well, then you possess the power right now. You possess the compass to your destiny. You write your destiny basically. So use this window of opportunity starting from now until the end of autumn to do whatever you need to do to find your truth, to embody your truth, to work, to do anything that you need to do. Now, another very important and relevant energy shift is Mars leaving Aquarius and entering the sign of Pisces, and we are going to be seeing this around the 13th of the month. And this is really important because Mars is not that strong in the sign of Pisces. It cannot bring forward its higher qualities. So this is a dual energy basically. It can, for some people, it can feel very uncomfortable, but for other people, this is actually what they have been waiting for, and here is the reason why. Now, if Mars is our drive, it is our willpower, it is our ambition, it is what we want to accomplish, the sovereignty of our wills. It is a very powerful masculine energy, so it's very impulsive, it's very quick, it's very radical, sometimes very assertive, to do things here and now. But when it is in the watery, very mystical, very emotional sign of Pisces, well, it cannot be that quick, it cannot be that assertive, it cannot be that sure of itself, so it takes a break. And when it takes a break, it becomes infinitely loving, it becomes supportive, it becomes a protector basically, an emotional protector. It brings out the most romantic qualities of the masculinity. So this is a perfect energy for people who have so very many water energy in their charts. This is a perfect energy for healers, for psychologists, for those who support others, for people who are, family oriented, because that is what it makes you, the protector, the catalyst of your family. You're there for other people. This is a really good energy for everyone who is spiritual, because Mars is the spiritual action. So whenever you have some major spiritual goal, now this is a very good energy to enact it, to start working, for things to come together, for manifestations to take place, for divine guidance to enter into your life directly. But of course, all of this requires gentleness, it requires patience. Not being sure of yourself and not knowing everything is actually a good thing here, because this is what you need to do. And that is exactly why it's a wonderful opportunity, Mars being in this part of the sky, for psychological healing, for purge, to face all the truth that you repressed in your subconscious, all the repressed emotions. It can heal past relationships and actually present relationships, because the truth comes out and you're willing to process it. You no longer stand from a place of ego where you just want to defend yourself. You want to be open to the perception of another person. What another person feels is much more important than what you feel, because you're animated by a deep desire of understanding. So this can heal a lot of relationships. May it be past relationship, rebuilding bridges, but also existing relationships, because understanding and compassion, basically, the Neptunian type of expression, is the key to everything. This is also wonderful energy for big fated relationships, friendships, alliances, soul level connections, soul contracts to enter reality. But this is also an equally perfect energy to break old soul contracts which are no longer relevant. Now this doesn't need to have a conflict to it. Simply, if it's no longer relevant in your soul, well, then it has to go away because something else needs to take this place. But for other people, those who embody a very fiery Mars, who are always very ambition, who are always leaders, who are trendsetters, for example, who are initiators, who are brave and bold, this can feel quite uncomfortable because their drive, their energy is gonna be sucked out, so to speak. It's going to be drowned by the waters of the emotion, and especially the Pisces type of emotion, the subconscious one, the repressed one, the one which comes deep within us, and not so much what we're aware of. But at the same time, this is perfect energy for every type of physical, spiritual activity. Now, let me explain. When spiritual practice has a physical element attached to it, like yoga, where you have to move, or taking a walk in the woods, in nature, you walk, so you move your physical body. It doesn't matter that your soul is deeply connected to this and that, your body is also doing something. So for these type of practices like Qigong or I don't know, Tai Chi and all of these spiritual practices which require us to move, to perform a physical activity, even when reciting mantras, well, all of these activities are incredibly blessed and supported by this Mars in the sign of Pisces. And collectively, this definitely means that all throughout the time, when Mars traversed the sign of Aquarius, where we received so much information from online, from the media, from the TV, from our friends, from other people, even from ourselves, basically. Now, this is the moment when that information needs to stop to flow, and we need to sit down and process it, filter it, uh, take out the stem of the weed from the herbs, so to speak, to select the information, to distill it and process it internally. So chances are that all this mediatic warfare and psychological manipulation that has been going on the world stage, well, people will demand this to stop, or they're simply going to disconnect. And it might not matter if you're like just an average person or a very passionate conspiracist, because chances are it's going to be enough. The digging deep, the mediatic warfare, the contradictory informations are gonna be enough for everyone. So this is the type of energy when that has to quiet down one way or another. Now, to also towards the end of the week, the sun is going to perfect its trines, its celestial conversations of supreme harmony. It holds with Jupiter and Pluto, and that is going to be a very important moment towards the 14th, 15th, and 16th of the month, because that can be a time of clarity, that can be a time of blessings, that can be a time when all of a sudden we actually find the inner strength when we embody our inner Pluto to step into our positions of power and do everything that we need to do for our futures, for our present. That is when we can get a celestial help, basically, to sort out our finances, to sort out our careers, to find out what we want to do in life. If you're a person who has this problem where you're confused and nothing resonates, nothing in existence resonates with what you actually want to do on the soul level, this energy opens a window where you can actually figure yourself out, where not only do you have to do inner work and search deep for the answers, but outer reality can inspire you and guide you, especially through other people. This is also good energy to manage debt, where you might find unexpected help, or maybe, towards the very, very end of the week, that Jupiter is still very close to Pluto, and if both of them are retrograde, that can ultimately represent a favorable change of legislation, or like loosening the rigidity of the financial rules and the requirements, where more people who cannot manage their debt can have a window of opportunity to just breathe and do something. So either way, this energy is definitely going to be bringing a karmic or other type of help into our lives one way or another, where if we are stuck, if we are stagnating, if our problems just seem to bury us alive, this can represent a saving grace. Or if we don't have that many problems in the present moment, but it's rather the future which represents the uncertainty, now this celestial conversation can give us the power, the faith, the optimism, love for ourselves and faith in ourselves to do whatever we want to do. And as long as we believe in it, well, sure enough, physical reality is going to be supporting us each and every step of the way. And then on the 15th, Jupiter stands still in the sky and goes retrograde the next day. And if you'd like to find out more and see the deeper meaning of this Jupiter retrograde season, you can check out the videos below in the description below. If I'd insist on all these aspects and retrogrades, well then this video would definitely be like 5 hours long, because next week is going to be so important. It's going to be such a massive energy shift, as in a psychological shift. That's how we're going to experience this, as our inner psychological configuration is going to rearrange. It doesn't matter if we like it or not, if we wish it or not. This is when all of us are being pushed to embody who we have to be in the future, in the close future, because we have to start working. We have to start making choices. We have to start making decisions. And ultimately, we have to start seriously navigating through this Venus retrograde, where we have to allow the confusion, the uncertainty, the emotional up and down to set in, to take over us, because that is the only way we can use it to our highest good, because it will definitely lead us to clarity. But before it gets there, we need to ask ourselves all those uncomfortable questions. Do we love this? Do we love that? Do we love that specific person? Are we happy with our jobs? Are we happy the way other people relate to us and see us? So this is going to open up so many big questions inside of us, and we have no choice but to look for the answers, but not obsessively. We cannot allow that Neptune to dominate us and to suffocate us in a big bubble of naivety, in a big bubble of confusion, idealism, where the answers have to be like crystal clear. We have to learn to work with what we've got. And sometimes in life, when clarity isn't given on a silver tray, then we have to learn how to live with a certain type of confusion, where when external reality doesn't help us in that present moment get the answers that we need, even if it's about self-knowledge, even if it's relation with the self, then that is the moment when we have to set a tone. Like, we have to tell ourselves, this is what I believe in, these are my life views, my life philosophies, and it doesn't matter how confused I am going to be deciding to act upon this guiding light that is my inner truth, even if it's not perfect, even if it's a big work in progress, because I cannot fear inner confusion. I cannot fear that voice inside me which permanently asks questions, because that is the voice of reason, and that needs to be protected and helped ultimately. For example, before a scientist begins a big work, they have a thesis, they have an assumption, and if they would be afraid to dig deep for the answers, well then the scientific research would get them nowhere. So sometimes confusion, along with that very powerful Gemini, Mercury and Gemini type of almost obsessive curiosity, is in the present moment our greatest virtue, as long as we know how to balance it, and as long as we know how to navigate through all of this, even when we don't have clarity, even when we are under an aura of confusion and that Neptunian type of deeply emotional surreal state where our dreams and desires get the better of us, because ultimately a square between Venus and Neptune can also play out as addictions, as escapism, as fantasy, wanting almost obsessively to escape reality. But if we are wise, fantasy and imagination can help us create the future if we know how to temper it, if we know how to separate fiction from truth, love from lust, the love we feel for another person or a situation or anything because it helps us, because it's practical, and the love that we feel for something which is unconditional, which has to have no reason why we love it, we just love it. Another way to explain what this Venus retrograde and Venus squaring Neptune is, I heard recently a spiritualist of my culture speak of three types of love. There is that lower love, where you love something for a very specific reason. For example, carnal love. For example, the 3D type of material love, where our instincts are the ones which govern us. And that love usually leads to, suffering and depression, because everything that we love for a very particular reason, if it's material, it's not permanent. We can lose it at any other moment. For example, if you are so in love with your big and fancy car, well, tomorrow that car can become dust. It might lead you to suffer, because if you're so attached to your object, well, then is that true love? Of course, there is the other type of love, the equal type of love, which is basically the romantic love, where we fall in love with the being of another person, but we also take that person as a perfect equal, because it is the exchange of love energy which animates that relationship. And there is the divine love, the highest kind of love, which is actually immortal, when you don't love something for its physical manifestation, but you just love the notion of it. It is like Venus in the sign of Libra type of love, where it is the philosophy of love that animates your being, and when it's philosophical, it comes from the divine, and it's true and authentic love. For example, we love the universe, we love our source of life, and that is the highest kind of love, because that opens us up to the divine spheres. And this Venus retrograde is about all of that, where we can decide for ourselves, where we can be the judges of what love is for us and how we love and why we love. Well, thank you so much for listening. This is going to be a massive week, and as I said earlier in this video, I definitely recommend you to listen to the perspectives of other astrologers. For example, Nadia Shah and Prem Gregory are my very favorite astrologers in the world, because this is a moment in time when one perspective is definitely not enough. Thank you once again for listening, for all your support and all your love. Wish everyone a very blessed next week. Until next time, bye for now.